Okay, let's continue from where we left off yesterday. But first, a small summary. So we said yesterday the difference between the Alter Rebbe and the Mittel Rebbe, which means the Alter Rebbe started bringing Elokus into the world. He started bringing the Shechina into the world, and therefore it includes everything, includes from the top till the bottom. And that's the idea of the sphere of Chachma, because Chachma is Koyach Ma, that's the essence, that's the idea itself. The Alter Rebbe revealed the essence of Chassidus in a way that could be understood. But now each one of the Rabbeim is going to take it more to be understood, just like Avraham Avinu, who revealed the idea that there is an Eibishter in the world. And it's not just, the world is not just the jungle. And then it went further with Yitzchak and Yaakov, and each one that brought it more down, but each one is bringing down more what started with Avraham Avinu. The same idea over here, the Alter Rebbe explains the general concept of Shechina, both the fact that it's the beginning of Hashem's revealing Himself into the world, and the fact that it comes all the way down into the world. But this is the essence of it. The Mittel Rebbe now takes it in Bina in a way of understanding. In a way of understanding that he explains Kav. Kav means the beginning of this Galos Ein Sof, the fact that Hashem's light now comes into the world. So he's starting to go into the specifics. When he says the Hashem's light which comes into the world, that's called Shechina. Why? Compared to the Atzmius, Ein Sof itself, the light, the essence of the light from before Tzimtzum, which that can't be called Shechina. On the other hand, the fact that the Alter Rebbe includes also until the Gashmius, because it's Chachma, you see it. When you see something, you could see it straight down to the physical. When you hear something, you only understand it. You understand it, it still remains more in spiritual. So the Mittel Rebbe took it to the next step, but it still remained more in the spiritual, and that's why the Mittel Rebbe B'chal, you see an interesting thing, the difference between the Mittel Rebbe and the other Rebbeim. Even in the Alter Rebbe, the Mittel Rebbe was totally removed from the physical world. You see many things in the Mittel Rebbe's life that he was totally mufshat from the world. The Alter Rebbe, and even more than that, the Tzemach Tzedek had a connection to the world. Now when we look at the difference between them, so the Alter Rebbe is called, what we say in Pasach Eliyahu, Chad Arich v'Chad Ktsir. One is long and one is short. The sphere of Chachma, or in general, the spheres on the right side, Chachma, Chesed, etc., is long. Long meaning it comes down all the way into the world. Kitzir, short, is Bina and etc., the spheres on the left side, which in general, they're from below going up, but because of that, in order to go up, they're removed from the world. The Alter Rebbe is coming down all the way into the world, and that's why the Alter Rebbe had more of a connection to the physical world. In his sight, in his idea of seeing it, he was able to come all the way down. The Mittel Rebbe is more spiritual, understanding, and that's why the Chassidus and Mittel Rebbe is so much longer. But yet, it's longer and it's more in-depth understanding, but it remains still, to a sense, removed. It's in seichel, it's understanding, but it hasn't yet come down into the physical totally. Then we get to the sphere of das, which that's the Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek, you have the concept, and that's what we said also, the Tzemach Tzedek, we saw more how he brought everything down into the physical, as well as in his Chassidus, and the Tzemach Tzedek's Chassidus, there is Nigla and Chassidus together, which means there's a lot of ideas coming from Nigla, a lot of ideas coming from Midrashim, from Gemaras, from Halachas, because it's bringing the concept of godliness in a way into the world. That's what Das is. Das is connection. And that's why we say now that the Tzemach Tzedek explains that Shechina is Malchus of Atzilus, and even Malchus of Atzilus, only the way it becomes Atik for the world of Bria. What does that mean? We know there's 4 worlds. The world of Atzilus is a world of godliness. It's a godly world. Similar, if we'll bring the example in a person. You have the Neshama itself, the essence of the soul. The essence of the soul is what? Moichin and Midas, intellect and emotions. You can't express the essence of the soul in anything else other than how it is in the world, which means the intellect of the soul and the emotions of the soul. But that is, the soul understands and the soul feels. Then it's brought down into how it's expressed into the world. First is thought, which thought, machshava, is what we call a lavush hamiyuchad. It's still connected. It's still part of the person. How a person thinks. Dibur is speech, where it's expressing it more for someone else, until finally Maisa is action, where it comes down into the practical world, totally outside of the person. And in the same way, the Eibishter made in the world 4 Elamis. There's Elam Atzilus, which it doesn't mean there's 4 worlds. If you go higher up, you're going to get to a different world. But inside everything that there is, inside every existence, there's 4 levels, which comes actually through the kav that we mentioned before. That the kav is called the kav amida. That's the measurement, like a ruler, which decides how much each world gets. The Atzilus has a abundance of godliness. Why? What is the idea of Atzilus? Atzilus is just the expression of godliness itself. The spheres of Atzilus is the Seichel and the Midas Chabad, and the Midas of Atzilus are all just Chabad and Midas, which express godliness. Bria is like the world of Machshava, so it's connected more still to godliness. It's still a more spiritual world. It's similar to Atzilus is like a bonfire, and Bria is like a torch, where there's light, where there's the godly revelation. It's connected still much more to godliness. It's like the world of Machshava. Yitzira is the world of Dibur. That's like the world where it's already speech, where it's already more connected to the physical. Godliness is less felt. And finally, Asiyah, where it's a dark place, where godliness isn't felt at all. But that's the whole purpose of creation, to come down into Elam Asiyah. Comes along the Tzemach Tzedek, and he says the following. In each world, there's all the 10 spheres. The lowest one of the spheres is Malchus. Malchus is the way it already transmits that light into the next level. How does Malchus transmit the light into the next level? Malchus is called, in the Lashon of the Mishnah, the way Chassidus and Kabbalah uses the Lashon of Mishnah, Malchus is called one of 2 things, either Zan of La'arayos, the tail of the lions, or Roish Lashualim, the head of the foxes. Now, the way Malchus is Zan of La'arayos means the way it's the last and final stage of the higher level. But then that same Malchus becomes the highest stage of the next level. It becomes the Roish Lashualim. Because that's the way things continue. That's called the Parsa, the curtain of the way things go on from one world to the next, is that Malchus, which is separate. It's not the spheres, the godly light itself, but it's rather what receives from all of that light, then becomes Atik, which is removed and higher and above Keser, which is higher and above the spheres of the next world. So you're taking the lowest, which receives all the light of the previous world, and that becomes the one which is the highest and removed from the next world. So says the Tzemach Tzedek that when Malchus is in the world of Atzilus, it's still part of Atzilus. It's still a godly light, even though it's Malchus. It's the lowest of the spheres of Atzilus, but it can't be called Shechina because it's godliness. Godliness isn't Shechina. Godliness is the Eibishter. Only when it becomes Atik for the world of Bria, where Bria is the beginning of the creation, it's like the levush, the garment of Machshava, it's the expression, it begins to become something separate. That's when you can call it Shechina, because that's when it becomes Sheikh, and that's when it rests. Now, before we go on to understand that idea, the way the Rebbe Marash explains it, just to understand how that connects to the concept of the Tzemach Tzedek, or one of the ways it connects Tzemach Tzedek is the sphere of Das, which means connecting, bringing it down into the world. Like we said earlier, there's Arich, Ktsir, and Beinuni. Arich is long, meaning what comes from above, Chachma or Chesed, they come from above, and they come all the way down. That's why it's called Arich. It comes from above, it brings down godliness into the world. Kitzir is short, meaning it doesn't reach the world, it's more in the spiritual, because it's the way you're going from understanding of the person, but the way a person, through his understanding, can connect to godliness, it's spiritual, it's hearing. Beinuni is like a Beinuni. A Beinuni has both. That's what we say always about a Beinuni. He has both the Nefesh Elikis and the Nefesh Abamis. He deals with both. Beinuni, you have both the from above and the below. It connects the two. That's the Das or Tiferes or the Spheres, which are the middle Sphera. It takes both things and puts them together. So the Tzemach Tzedek is saying, where's Shechina? Where is it putting it down into the world when it's Atik for the world of Bria? Because then it comes into the world. Otherwise, it's still in the spiritual. The Tzemach Tzedek's thing is to bring it down, to connect it. Like we said, Tzemach Tzedek brought the Nigla and Chassidus together, and etc. That wasn't the whole idea of the life of Tzemach Tzedek. Now we go on and explain it through the Rebbe Marash. So just an interesting point. Here we had Chachma Mina Das. We had the Alter Rebbe, the Middle Rebbe, Tzemach Tzedek. What about Chesed Gvura Tiferes? So Chesed Gvura Tiferes is in one of two ways. Either it's like we know in Tefillin. Tefillin has there's two ideas. Tefillin is the three Moichin. That's the whole concept of Tefillin is Moichin. It's Moichin the Ima, Moichin Abba, etc. It means it's the godly intellect, the way we draw it down through the mitzvah of Tefillin. But on Tefillin you have two shins. One side there's a shin with 3 lines, and the other side there's a shin with 4 lines. Because Tefillin, although it's the 3 lines, the 3 moichin, but the moyach of das includes chesed and gvura. And that's why we see there's 4 parshas in Tefillin. Kaddish, Parshas Kaddish, where we say, when Parshas Kaddish, when we say Kaddish, which is holy, separate, removed, and it's Laman Tia Toiras Hashem Beficha, that's the Mayach of Chachma, the essence. Where we say V'hayaki Shalcha Vincha, questions and answers, that's the Mayach of Bina. And Shema and Vahayam Shemaya are the Mayach of Das, because Das gives birth to Chesed and Gevura. It gives birth to love and fear, which are Shema and Vahayam Shemaya. That's why it's 3 Moichin, but specifically it's called the 4 Moichin. That's why we have the 2 types of Shinas on the Tefillin. So this idea of inside Das is called Maftecha, the Kalil Shis. It's the key, which includes all other 6. So in Das, in the idea of the Tzemach Tzedek, because he brings it down into the world, you have already Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferes, because those are the main midas. The other way is that Chachma, which is coming from above, it says Abba Yised Barta, the father is the foundation. You say Ki Ima Bita, the mother and the daughter are the same, and the father and the son are the same. So the father is Chachma, and the son, Chesed, is called Ben, the son, so that connects to Chachma. The daughter, which is Gvura, connects to Bina, and the middle, Tiferes, connects to Das. So that's why they're already included in either. That's why we find, for example, the Avis, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are called Chachma Bina Das, but they're also called Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes. The Rabbeim, the Alter Rebbe, Middle Rebbe, Tzemach Tzedek, are sometimes you refer to them as Chachma Bina Das, sometimes you refer to them as Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, because in truth, they're all connected. It's all the same idea. So now, however, then you have to bring it more down into the world. The Spheres of Netzach, Hoid, Yisoid is already the outer midas. It's not the inner midas which are included in Das. That's feelings. Now it's already bringing it down into action, bringing it more down into the world. That starts from the Rebbe Marash onwards. The Rebbe Marash is the idea of L'chatchila Rebbe, which means he was in the world. He lived in the most abundant way in the world. He lived with physical riches, and yet he lived above the world. He had open miracles all the time where the world didn't take place. That's the sphere of Netzach. Netzach is victory, where the essence is revealed in a way that you're connecting in the world with above the world. And that was the idea of the Rebbe Marash. Now let's start at least the idea that the Rebbe Marash explains. The Rebbe Marash is now the sphere of Netzach, which is bringing it down. So he's explaining the concept of Chachma, but explaining it in a way of understanding it, explaining it in a way where it makes sense. Because the Alter Rebbe, we said, has the 2 opposites. On one hand, it's the beginning of the Isgalus, which is above the world. On the other hand, it's Sheikh and Mislavish, which comes into the world. So now comes along the Rebbe Marash and explains how is it that Shechina is, how is it that Kav, which is above the world, is called Shechina? So he says, because the whole purpose of it, even in the lowest level, the whole purpose of it is that it should come down into the world eventually. The whole purpose of the beginning of the revelation of godliness is that eventually it should come down into the world. So therefore, even in the beginning, it's already called Shekhinah. We'll go on in Mitzvah Hashem to explain more of that later, but that's the idea of what connects the two things. It's really above the world, but even the highest level of light, its purpose is to come down. So therefore, in the lowest, we see the highest, and Mitzvah Hashem will continue with that tomorrow.